And here she is in person, Loree Draude. Welcome back.
Thanks, Gene. It's great to be back.
Loree, you and I were talking offline just before we started. You are the first guest. Excuse me. You are the first guest to get to come back. You were a guest on episode number 8, and here we are at almost episode 68. This will probably be 67 by the time it records. So over a year later, you're back, and it's for a very good reason. You continue to do very, very interesting things. So congratulations for this special, what's the word? We're bestowing a very special capability or trust here. I lost my words, but welcome back is what I'm trying to say. You're a great guest. I went back to the prior episode after you came across my my radar again for your latest update that we're going to talk about. And we covered an awful lot in that first episode. You were a pioneer aviator as the restriction on women flying in combat was lifted. This was back in the 90s, an early F-18 pilot, S-3B pilot. You've flown off aircraft carriers, you've deployed, you've been in very high-end business school, a graduate of Wharton, worked in Silicon Valley at some major brand names. And that wasn't enough. So you had to keep pushing. You're now, to my understanding, living in New York City, presenting yet another performance, and we're going to talk about that. When do you rest?
Pretty much from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. every night. I'm really, I strive to keep consistent sleep, but that's about it.
So what I'm alluding to for those in the audience that don't know is Loree is continuing to self-produce a one-woman show that is based to some degree on her time as a naval aviator. But Loree, let you describe what's happening, and I want to dig into this to expose some of these creative channels to our listeners that they might want to explore.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gene. I am really excited to be bringing my show to the Hollywood Fringe Festival. This is Hollywood, California. I don't know if Hollywood, Florida does a Fringe, but this is a Fringe Festival that's been happening for many years in Southern California, in Hollywood. And I'll be performing my one-woman show, I Feel the Need, from June 6th through June 18th. I have 5 performances. And this show is an update from the show I've been doing. I performed I Feel the Need at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival last year. And I did it 23 times there. It was an amazing experience. I learned a lot about, what parts of the show people really responded to and which parts I felt might need some more energy. And so I went back to the drawing board and I ended up rewriting most of the show. And I'm really proud of this show. It's very much what I had hoped it would be, which is about something that's bigger than just me. I'm absolutely the narrator. I'm talking about this first deployment with women in combat aviation squadrons back in the 90s. But the show I did in Edinburgh, I think, was more self-reflective about my own personal journey, even past the Navy. Whereas this show that I'm doing at the Hollywood Fringe Festival really focuses on what the experience was like for us on the Abraham Lincoln for that first 6-month deployment with women on board. And it also just raises questions and thoughts about the role of women in the military as well as in society. And so I'm super excited to share that, and I hope people will come see it.
Well, congratulations. I want to back up a couple of steps here. And I think we talked about this to some degree in the prior episode, but it's easy for people to kind of forget that, the women today in the armed forces are standing on the shoulders of some heroes that came before them, of which you are certainly one. And it's easy to kind of forget that there were challenges associated with that. Can you describe, some of the tension that you might have felt, or what some of those obstacles were that you felt were in the way? So I know some was legislative, some was culture, some was idiotic personalities, I'm sure. But let's hear it in your words.
Yeah, Absolutely. And, I have to note that I stood on the shoulders of the women who began in naval aviation back in the 70s. So, those were the real pioneers because women had not been flying in the Navy at all. And people like Captain Rosemary Mariner came in and, started flying in the Navy. And so that generation of women aviators put up with a lot. It's not to say we didn't have our challenges too, but I would say, our challenges were about, I think anytime you have a big change like we did, it's going to be challenging. A lot of people don't like change, and even if it's for the better. And typically change is for the better, I believe. And so for our deployment, I think having women on board in a place where there usually had not been any women was challenging for everybody. Men were not used to having women around. Women were not used to being on a ship for the first time. And so, there were growing pains for sure. And I think the biggest influence on whether or not a big change like that is a success is the leadership. And so if you have leaders who are supporting the change and, looking for ways to listen to the challenges and do things to help ease those changes, then I think you have successful deployments. If you have leaders who are resisting change, then I think that makes it more challenging for everybody. So, we had I would say we had a mix. My commanding officer was incredible about supporting me and the other women in the squadron. And I don't think personally was thrilled about having women on board. He had come up in a Navy that was pretty much almost all men, but he made it work because he's a great leader, and he saw that this was the direction the Navy was going and the world was going. And he made it work. I think there were other leaders who resisted it, who felt threatened or felt that it was going to somehow diminish their warfighting capabilities. And so they pushed back, or they weren't as welcoming, they weren't as supportive. And I think the women in those squadrons had a much more difficult time.
Was that pushback passive aggressive or direct or both?
Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's the way that that things are accepted. If comments are being made, or if people are being excluded, and that is accepted in an organization, then you're implicitly saying this is okay. It's okay to treat people differently because of their gender or whatever characteristic. And sometimes it was outright, it's things that people would say, and then not be, then not using that as an opportunity to point out that this isn't acceptable. So yeah, I would say it was a mix of both of those.
Making the comparison to the business world that you became a part of, did you see any of the same sorts of things with respect to how change would come about, or how people were treated, or can you draw some parallels?
Sure. I feel like since I went from the military to the tech industry is typically, it's very innovative, it's very disruptive, so it tends to move quickly, and it's more change is done in service of innovation. Innovation is what's driving success in the tech industry. And so that, I won't say it's completely genderless, because I think historically, traditionally, the tech industry has and still is run mostly by white men. And so, we're starting to see a much more diverse workforce, but it's not necessarily reflective of the overall population. So I think tech companies are making efforts to make that more equitable, and to have a workforce that better represents the people who are using their products. But so in that regard, I think that the tech industry, I'm not really sure, how in comparison to the military, if one is, necessarily more diverse than the other. I feel like the military is definitely more diverse when you look at the enlisted ranks and when you look at junior officers. But as you rise up in the ranks to the senior levels, it's not as diverse. We're starting to see more diversity. We've had a female service chief with in the Coast Guard, and we're seeing more women in command of squadrons and battle groups and things like that. But for in tech companies, I don't know. I'd have to look at the numbers to see if it's getting any better, but it still feels like there aren't as many women in the top leadership positions. But there are a lot of people who are raising awareness of that. Actually, a woman that I worked with at Bain & Company, Jenna Fisher, just wrote a best-selling book about how women can be supported as they are working in industry and taking more senior level positions. So there's more awareness, there's definitely progress, but we're definitely not there yet.
There are gems just flowing here, Loree. I want to steal this line. Change is done in service of innovation. That's a good one.
Thanks.
But the concept, and I didn't know that we would go in this direction on the interview. I'm glad we are, certainly as a father of 4 adult daughters. If you look at the Fortune 500, the number of women in the C-suite, I think the number is like 15% or less.
That sounds about right.
And you mentioned the the service chiefs. It's taking a long time. I mean, decades. And I know a career takes decades, but it's taking longer than it should have for women and diversity to populate the flag and general officer ranks. It's amazing how that happens, and I think it's a part of the self-selecting promotion process, in that we are selected from within by a culture, and it's very difficult to change that culture.
And it's a normal human tendency to want to be with people who look like you or who are like you. That's comfortable. But what we've seen is that, and what studies have shown, is that diversity makes organizations better. It doesn't necessarily make it easier, but it definitely produces a better product. And I think that's the same, for the military. With a diverse military, you're going to be able to better serve the constituency of the United States. You're going to be able to better support and serve the country that you're from. And so I think by recognizing this as a normal human trait, but that it's not necessarily what's going to be best for society, or even as we continue to evolve for the human species, like we have to learn how to get along better, because we are so intermingled now. It's not like hundreds of years ago where it was difficult to connect with people from another country or another continent. We're much more connected now, so we have to learn how to appreciate each other more and how to work together more. And so I think as things like social media have come up, for better or worse, social media certainly has its long list of ills. It is hopefully opening up people's minds about who people are, and although I'll walk that statement back, because I feel like the online connection just doesn't replicate the in-person connection, and I feel like it's easier for people to quote other somebody else when you're online than it is if you're standing across from somebody at a table in person. So I think it'll be interesting to see how people continue to develop, and how hopefully being exposed to other types of people and having relationships and connections with people that aren't exactly like the people that maybe you grew up with or are in your family or are in your immediate community, how those opportunities will help us realize that we're all human beings and we have different life experiences, but at the end of the day, we all are from the same species, and we got to get along.
It's really well said. I couldn't add to that. Your creative outlet is about connecting with people and you described our prior episode that you had fun producing Folksel Follies and those sort of skits. I don't know if it was exactly Folksel Follies, but but ready room skits on within your squadron. You wrote this one woman play. Somehow you got yourself to off Broadway. How exactly did you do that? You jumped in at Edinburgh, but you performed in New York City first. How did you make that come about?
I don't even remember how I found out about the solo festival. I think I was looking online for places where I might be able to do this show on stage. And this was right in the middle of the pandemic. So I had originally planned to do it in Northern California, which is where I was living at the time. But then everything shut down with the pandemic. So I found this festival online and applied to it. And the show got picked up for it. And so I was able to bring it to New York and do 2 performances here. So I guess, it's that whole thing of combination of preparation and luck.
What was it? Was the show written when you applied, or was that the impetus to finish it off?
Yeah. Yeah, I had written a version that I was doing on Zoom. So I was doing an online version, but so it had not been staged yet. There were a few scenes that I had not written yet that I added for the stage version. So it was definitely a work in progress. And yeah, I laugh because I'm doing that to myself again, where I work better with deadlines. So if I put something on the calendar, then I know I have to do it. And so that's what's happening right now with the Hollywood Fringe Festivals. I've finished writing the show, thank goodness, because we're about a month out, but I'm rehearsing it now and memorizing it and doing all those things while simultaneously doing the promotion and all the coordination, all the logistics. So it's definitely keeping me busy this month.
Well, I think what you just described there was something that I think highly successful people do, is that they're not just working off a list. They're working off something that has some precision to it. It's got a date associated with it, that either it's an intermediate date or a final date it has to be completed by. And there's some level of production required here, right? Somehow you learned how to produce this. You use the term staged. I can imagine what that is. I don't know exactly what that is. How did you learn how to piece those things together so that you would be ready for that first show? Or maybe you weren't ready, and maybe you'll share that. I don't know. You tell us.
No, that's a great question. Well, I'm working with an amazing director, Beth Bornstein-Dunnington. She is phenomenal. And so she's, been guiding me throughout this whole journey over the past few years. And so she's the one who has helped me understand, what goes into putting on a show like this. And especially with the rewrite, I think that was, a big a big goal to do it so quickly. So and staging is mostly understanding where I need to stand on the stage for the different parts of the show, and how the lighting is, if there's sound cues, video cues, things like that. So it's basically kind of the mechanics of putting it together. So I would say just doing it is what's helped me learn how to do this. And that's why I'm excited about doing it at the Hollywood Fringe, because now I've done this show off Broadway and at Edinburgh. And so I feel really, excited and confident about doing this version of the show. I think the first time I was about to step on stage in New York, almost 2 years ago, I was really nervous, but I felt good. I felt like I had prepared a lot. I had rehearsed a lot. The funny thing, Jean, is that when it is so much, I'm amazed at the similarities between putting on a show and launching aircraft off an aircraft carrier.
I was literally going to go there when you talked about fear. You are a pilot as opposed to a naval flight officer, which means you're the person at the controls landing on a carrier. And I know, just to qualify to land on a carrier, there's, day and night, all weather sort of stuff that you have to demonstrate. How does it compare to that pucker factor, as we'll call it?
Right. Well, I mean, the nice thing with doing the one woman show is that I don't have to worry, like there's not the physical danger that there was with flying around a carrier. And the responsibility is mostly to myself. I don't have a team, who I'm bringing back on board a carrier at night. So there's definitely, it's a different level of pucker factor, but there's certainly a sense of responsibility I feel towards the audience. I want to make sure I'm delivering a great show that they're going to enjoy and remember. So it's a different kind of service. It's service in the spirit of hopefully entertaining, but also people learning something that maybe they didn't know before. And, perhaps for some people opening up their mind to something that they hadn't thought about before. And so that's definitely different than flying, but the similarity is certainly around teamwork. Like I absolutely could not be doing this on my own. Besides Beth, there are the people at the theater that I work with, the technicians who are doing the lighting and the sound. There are all the people who are supporting me doing this show. And so it's definitely, a great teamwork opportunity. And there's lots of preparation that has gone into the show, just like, before I ever got near an aircraft carrier, I had to do hundreds of landings at the airfield. I had to do simulators, there's tons of preparation before you go out and you do the thing. So yeah, it's been interesting to note those similarities, and in some ways it feels a little familiar, which is great.
Is there financial risk associated with this production?
Oh yeah, I mean, yes.
I have no idea, but I think there's a comparison to be drawn here for people running small business or people facing certain sorts of risk. This I don't know the degree of risk, but maybe you can just describe that for us.
I'm definitely not doing this to make money. I am doing this because I want this story to be told in a creative way. And I want people to know about, the challenges that we had, and to appreciate the fact that women are doing this job in the Navy today, and the armed services today, and to recognize how difficult that is. So financially, this was more of a passion project for me. I'm definitely not, it's not a profitable endeavor for me by any means, but I don't view it as a, profit loss type of activity. I view this as an investment, because it is, and not a financial investment, but more, being able to get up and do a show at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival 23 times in a row, like that was an investment in my own personal growth. And it gave me such a confidence boost. And it was just personally rewarding to be able to meet so many people from the audience and talk with them after the shows. And so all of that has been incredibly personally enriching. Money-wise, I've been fortunate that, I'm able to financially support myself doing this show. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that. But yeah, I think sometimes with creative endeavors, or even with any kind of endeavor where you don't necessarily have the money up front to do something like this, I really do believe that if it's something that you truly desire and that you really want to make happen, you will figure it out. And somehow things will come together to make it happen. I absolutely believe that. And so that has been the case so far. This has been something that I've really believed in doing. And so far I've been able to figure it out and make it work.
Two comments. I use the word fulfillment a lot in talking about the post-active duty pursuits, that fulfillment is really something that we should consider, because it's really what we want to feel. And that I think that's what you're describing, is a sense of fulfillment that comes with having followed this path. I recently had a group of what I call ringmasters together. These are successful business people learning from other successful business people. and somebody was commenting on wanting to grow their business from 25 million to 50 million, and they were looking for how to get the financial support required to make some of the investments. And one of the sage ringmasters in the room told this quite successful small businessman, he said, the money is the easiest part. And you almost use those exact words, where you can figure this out. It's the other stuff that's much more difficult. But really interesting to hear the parallels here. You mentioned the rewrite earlier. Was the rewrite drawn based on feedback or based on your reflection of how the story could be enhanced or told differently, or is it some combination?
It was a combination. I would ask people after the show, like, tell me, what parts did you enjoy the most? What parts did you feel your attention maybe wavering a little bit? And so after, gathering some feedback around that helped point me in the direction that I'm going in. But also there were just parts of the show that I was, quite honestly, just tired of talking about. So, and they were mostly things that had to do with my own personal life and my own personal growth. And while I'm very proud of those parts of my show, I just didn't feel like that was the show I wanted to do. I really wanted the show to be more about flying and being around the aircraft carrier, and that particular period in time where there was this big change. And what was that like for me as a woman going through it? I can't speak for the other women that were on the deployment, but I wanted to be able to represent my experience and talk about and use that experience as maybe a lens into what was going on, in the Navy and in America at that time in the early 90s, early to mid 90s. So I would say it was a combination of both, not just what I had heard back from people, but also what I wanted to do a show about and the direction that I wanted to take it in.
It sounds like on some level, the early iteration had some therapeutic value.
Yes.
and maybe you only need therapy once, or I don't know.
When I could just feel myself, doing the show and talking about some of these things and just being like, God, I cannot wait until this scene is over. I'm just so tired of talking about. That's when I realized I probably need to take the show in a different direction.
So have you similarly updated the screenplay?
No, I haven't. My co-writer and I are still trying to find a home for that. We have not updated the screenplay. Thankfully, the screenplay has, it's been, gosh, I think, guess what, 4 or 5 years now since we wrote it. I don't think if anything, I thought that maybe having Top Gun Maverick come out would help with finding a home for it, but so far not yet. So
I just held up my piece of paper that says Top Gun Maverick. It's my next question.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe that was enough for people. They don't need any more naval aviation, but
well, here's my take on the question is, did it deliver?
Did Top Gun Maverick? Yes, yeah. It delivered. So I loved it. The flying sequences were fantastic. I thought that they did again, it's a documentary. It's not a documentary. It is a feature film. Top Gun Maverick is not a documentary. It is a feature film. And so, you have to make some allowances and, there's dramatic license, but I thought that it was a very worthy sequel to Top Gun. And
I came away with the same takeaway. So I was a surface guy, as you know, and it took a long time for that sequel to come about. I think it was 20 years between movies or more. And I came away thinking, wow, they really did a good job tying that together. It's one of only a couple of movies that I've seen twice. And if somebody told me, let's go see it this afternoon, I'd go because I enjoyed it so much. And I know a lot of people, and my wife included, are not crazy about Tom Cruise, but I believe he delivers in his movies. And he had a lot to do with the telling of that story. He's not just the actor in that movie. But I'm fascinated to hear your perspective on that.
Well, I really like that, they have the things that you expect in a Top Gun sequel, all these amazing flying sequences, super cool air-to-air combat. But I also liked that there was a little bit more emotional development that you didn't see in Maverick, in the character Maverick in Top Gun, right? It was very much an 80s, I'm just laughing. I feel the need for speed. That was, where I got the title of the show. But I just felt like, okay, yeah, he's grown up, he's definitely a more mature Maverick, and it's a different Navy. In Top Gun Maverick, we have a much more diverse squadron. So, and that is all very reflective of the time that we live in versus, 1986, when the original came out. That was a very different, America than we're living in now. So, so I thought it was very good for many reasons, and I really enjoyed it. I'd totally go see it again.
So my reason for wanting to ask that question was related to your writing of a screenplay, in that when it came out in the 80s, when the original came out in the 80s, it was a blockbuster, a very different kind of movie. You are uniquely positioned to be telling the story that you're telling through this one woman play. But the the potential for a screenplay, you don't know who might buy the rights and then sit on that right for a while. And then 15 years from now it could be a breakout of a different type.
Who knows?
But
I'm always open to possibilities, but I always thought that the screenplay that I wrote is takes place now. The show that I'm doing takes place mostly in the mid 90s. And so it would be interesting to see, I don't know if they would ever, if there is an appetite for more of a historical film, like Devotion, I thought was fantastic, about the pilots in the Korean War, and that, the challenge of integrating. And so I don't know if there would ever be a movie about the challenge of integrating women into the Navy, into naval aviation. But you never know. I mean, some movies I watch and I'm like, I can't believe anyone ever invested money to make this movie. And then there are so many that I watch and I find incredibly entertaining and meaningful. So I don't know where mine fits in there, but I think it's a meaningful story, and I would love to see it, on a screen someday. But right now, I'm just happy doing this one person show.
Well, I appreciate you that you're giving us time here. I have two more questions for you. One is a little bit retrospective, and then the last question will be a little bit future looking. But you came into naval aviation in the 90s. One can do some mental math and imagine that you're of a certain age. I'll let you tell what you want to tell of that. But you have explored some new things a little bit later in life, and I talk about lifelong learning in various ways on the program with different guests. But you've explored some different things, and you're now in a position where you have some financial resources to allow a passion project like this. Do you have some thoughts on that sort of perspective on continuous learning or creative pursuits that people may be harboring and just holding themselves back from?
Yes, and especially since as a coach, I work with people to help support them in starting these pursuits that they've been wanting to do for a long time, but for whatever reason haven't. I would say, I just feel like it's never too late. And I feel sad that a lot of people think, oh, I'm too old to do this, or I'm too old to do that. And I feel like if there's something that you really want to do, why not do it? I think I mentioned this in my play, but I our air wing lost several aviators during our time flying together, and those people didn't get to, live a full life. Well, I mean, they lived a full life within the time that they were on this planet, but they didn't get older. They didn't have the opportunity that I have now, or that other people have now. And so I feel like I almost owe it to them, to be able to go out and do the things that I really love doing. And it took me, I think, a while to have the courage to do that, because it is scary, getting up on a stage and doing a show, or doing something that I haven't done before that's out of my comfort zone. But when I'm doing things that I really enjoy doing, it doesn't feel as scary, and it actually feels great. It's like exercising. The hardest part is, putting those sneakers on in the morning at 6:30. And once you're doing it, it's like, oh yeah, this actually feels pretty good. And so I think that I really do firmly believe that if there are creative pursuits or things that you want to do, you're never too old to start doing that. And there are plenty of examples in history of people starting creative careers later in life, or other careers. It doesn't have to be a creative endeavor. It can be anything that you've just wanted to do, a business, write a book, all those things. Age, there are certain physical things, maybe you're not going to start your NBA career when you're 50, but there are plenty of things where you can satisfy those dreams and those desires that you have for your life. So, and yes, I've been very lucky and very privileged to be able to do this show and to do the creative things I'm doing now. So I absolutely encourage people to, well, first, just to really tap into what is it that you really want in life, that you really have been afraid of pursuing for whatever reason. Money, you're worried about what people are going to say about you or think about you, and all those things. That doesn't matter. Like, you'll figure it out if it really means something to you and you really want to do it.
Last question. If you came back 100 episodes from now, what do you think would be the thing we would be talking about?
Wow. A great question. Well, I'm going to say what I hope we're going to be talking about, which is, I hope we're going to be talking about the television series that I'm executive producing about naval aviation. I'm going to leave it open-ended like that. And that we are we're having a good laugh thinking back about this episode and how I put this idea out into the world and somehow it happened. Yeah.
So for reference, if we're doing weekly podcasts, which has been the norm for the first 60 some that we've done here, we're talking about less than 2 years from now. This could be something that's real.
I like it.
So for those in the audience, this is how it happens. You just have to have that idea. You have to have the right mindset to say what other people think doesn't matter. You have to apply some courage, some specificity to your goals. And before long, you recognize that it is just like putting your gym shoes on at 6:30 in the morning.
Absolutely. Jean, I will be inviting you to the premiere.
I love it. Loree, great to have you back, and congratulations on the success. One more time, on the Hollywood Fringe Festival, June 6th through 18th, where can people get tickets?
Gosh, I should have the website memorized, but it's
we will put it in the show notes. It seems to me that, was there a way to see this online or a remote viewing of it?
There is. So I am going to be live streaming the performance on June 15th. It's at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. So it's a little late on the East Coast, really late if you're in Europe, not too bad if you're in Hawaii. But the show, you can find more information at hollywoodfringe.org. And my show's name is I Feel the Need.
Loree Draude, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jean.